Hello, we are now to conclude the beautiful poem, The Whitsun Weddings, written by Philip Larkin. Until yesterday, we had studied that the narration of the journey by train which Philip Larkin undertakes on a Whitsun Saturday. He begins in comfort and is introduced to various facts which the Whitsun wedding days brought to him. That there were several who were in the train of marriage, and there were others who were seeing these trains of the newlyweds off. The poet has very elaborately explained the appearance outside the windows, on the landscape and on platforms, and he is also describing the state of affairs inside the coach. So, the Whitsun weddings. Fathers had never known success so huge and wholly farcical. There are 3 dots where we begin this poem, and they say that this is segment of a sentence from the previous stanza. With this, on this occasion of the children having been wedded off, the poet feels that fathers had such a look on their face which expressed that it was a success never known prior to them, but that also that this success was wholly farcical. So the fathers had played it as a farce. Farce, an artificial condition. So the fathers thought that they are rid of the burden, that they have dispatched their duties, but actually they have not. And the women shared the secret like a happy funeral. This is the poet's contempt of the state of affairs. For fathers, it is a farce, and the women are sharing it like a secret, which is like a happy funeral. The paradox employed here of this marriage being a happy funeral is indicative of the fact that as these elderly people had once surrendered themselves to the fire that ensued after the marriage, they have thrust their children into the same one. They have buried, I'm sorry, not putting them in fire, it's a funeral, so it is burial of their children. It's like a sense of having dispatched their children. While girls, gripping their handbags tighter, stared at a religious wounding. Try to see the meaning that could come out of this word wounding. You could read it as wounding, and you could read it as wounding. Wounding would mean that in the same circle being woven around, being turned around in the same vicious circle that their parents have gone into. So the girls were gripping their handbags tighter because the handbags contained their artificial jewelry and the money that might have been given to them as gifts. They were holding their handbags tighter and stared at the religious wounding. Free at last, and loaded with the sum of all they saw. They are free at last. The parents, the mother, the father, the mother, and the girls all are free at last and loaded with the sum of all they saw. How can one be free when it is loaded? The poet seems to be using the paradox, the language of paradox, to tell you that these weddings are paradoxes. They are farces, they are funerals, they are woundings, and they are becoming free. They are symbolic of a freedom which is loaded. We hurried towards London, shuffling gouts of steam. Now fields were building plots, and poplars cast long shadows over major roads. And for some 50 minutes, so as is the trend in this poem, that every stanza seems to be intermittently continued in the succeeding one. So I leave it here and I explain this. We hurried towards London. So they are moving towards their destination, and since the coupe is completely full, so they are hurrying, and there are gouts of steam. The steam is as if a disease being the symptomatic of a disease that is coming out of the train. And the fields had now turned into building plots. So they are approaching a city, and the poplars, the very tall trees, they are casting their long shadows over major roads. And for some 50 minutes, that in time would seem just long enough to settle hats and say, I nearly died. A dozen marriages got underway. So it was just time enough for him to settle his hat on his head and retort to himself that he nearly died of all this rendezvous with the people, with the customs, with the artificiality of the situation, and because he had seen a dozen marriages underway. So he gives a fair account of how many people might have entered after having married. Now again he switches over our attention to these people. They watched the landscape, sitting side by side. An Odeon went past, a cooling tower, and someone running up to bowl. So he narrates again that outside there are theatres and there are cooling towers, and because it is an open space, so there is some kind of cricket also going on. So someone is running to bowl, and none thought of the others they would never meet, or how their lives would all contain this hour. This is pricking at the conscience of the times, of the people sitting inside, that everyone sat so blank, anticipating the end of the journey, that no one thought of the others. No, though they were all beautifully dressed in several colors and in those artificial jewelry things, and looking merry in the time that they entered, with all that much of the burden of that had been thrown to them in the form of advices and confettis. So none of them was now, it was now a time when everyone was anticipating a future and contemplating maybe on the past, that they were lost in their own labyrinth of thought, where they had none any time to think it over, that the people who are co-travelers at this moment in the journey, none of them is thinking of those who they would never meet, or how their lives would all contain this hour. We see that none of the stanzas is without this all. So everyone, all of them have no notion of this interactive this journey which could have been interactive. So this is the 20th century world. This is rather the 21st century world in which we are all co-travelers and each oblivious of the other as much as one is of oneself. Or how their lives would all contain this hour. So this 1 hour journey, see, 1 hour journey has been cast in 8 stanzas with elaborate descriptions, with elaborate narration, but this will soon be forgotten. I thought of London spread out in the sun, its postal districts packed like squares of wheat, and outside on the outskirts of every city we see the upcoming squares and upcoming constructions and which mark squares. So these small squares of which he has a glimpse, he feel are in a way symbolically analogous to the squares of the city. And these squares of wheat, they reminded him of the postal districts which are packed side by side in the city of London. There we were aimed. Where? The place which would be a postal districts jammed against each other, just as the patches of the fields are jammed against each other. So in this jammed civilization, in this jammed inhabitation, would these jammed people be thrust out, and they would head somewhere in various directions, trying to locate their own destinies, trying to locate their own destinations. It was there that we were aimed. The poet doesn't identify himself as outside this crowd. He says we were all aimed to that London, the city of growth, the city of development, the city of hustle and bustle, and the city to which they were all heading to find their own respective stability. And as we raced across bright knots of rail, past standing pullmans, walls of blackened moss came close. So there must have been tunnels leading this route onto London, and there was blackened moss, and it was nearly done. This frail travelling coincidence. So weddings, the Whitsun weddings has been given the expression of being a frail travelling coincidence, that which will be broken shortly. Frail travelling coincidence. It just happened by coincidence that they were together. And what it held stood ready to be loosed with all the power that being changed can give. So all that which was contained in their hearts would now be loosed out, and everyone would be a changed person. They are all changed already, and when they have landed on the earth of London, they would lose all their power of this frail travelling coincidence. That which had kept them together is now shortly to be, the spell would be broken. We slowed again, and as the tightened brakes took hold, there swelled a sense of falling. So the narrative is now coming to an end, but again the activity has increased. With the slowing down of the train and with the tightening of the brakes, there swelled a sense of falling. Everyone was in such a haste to find their own destinies that they were like falling down. like an, and this falling down, he beautifully compares through the simile when he says, a sense of falling like an arrow shower sent out of sight, somewhere becoming rain. So, this people were falling down, moving, stepping down from, getting down from the train with such haste, it was like an arrow shower. A shower, as if by a natural force, life has been dispelled into London, and soon they will all become rain. The dropping down of the people and their baggages and everything has been compared with the falling of, with the rainfall, with the drops of rain falling down. But this shouldn't be taken as a simple poem of a journey, of the narration of a journey by train. The poet says that with the 3/4 full train, when he started, has come 1 hour later into London. So that which started from Lincolnshire, a small place, has now come to end on the big city of London. The people who were single earlier are now dropping down into London as couples. So they will bring the rain. Rain, and the image of rain brings to our mind the blessing that has come, but it also brings to our mind the process of the water that rises from the earth falls down to it. So these children who had come from the parents will now fall back to fall into that vicious circle of giving birth and continuing with the cycle of life. So they are all falling down, like the sense of falling is like a desire to become the rain, to do their turn in this journey of life. This poem is, though on a superficial level, the narration of a journey, but in fact it is metaphysical representation of our life. We all begin from the native place, our father's place. We all are given an adieu with too many advices for life, and then we carry on with the work that our parents had been doing. It is about the cycle of life. It is about the duties, and it also says that when people are traveling with each other, it's a very ironic fact that even when the relatives had come to bid them adieu and to give them advices, no one seems to have anyone in mind. They are oblivious of the ones present next to them. So why should they be keeping in mind the ones who departed from them in the previous stations? Life is like this. It is a moving on. It is a carrying of customs. It is an observation of traditions. Think it over. Try to think what actually the poem should be meaning, how a journey in a train is a microcosm of the journey that we undertake in this world, and how those that started off very innocent will now be the farers of the same fortune that their parents had been in. Thank you.